Welcome all to Off the Cuff, and I am so thrilled and happy to be talking to Smriti Mundhra, the producer, director, and writer of the Netflix docuseries, The Romantics. Smriti is one of the most promising filmmakers, yay for to brown women in media. For that, Smriti Mundhra is an Academy Award nominated director and producer. Her documentary film St. Louis Superman was nominated for the 2020 Academy Award. Her debut feature, A Suitable Girl, world premiered in competition at the 2017 Tribeca Film Festival to rave reviews. She is also the producer of the hit Netflix series Indian Matchmaking. Who can forget Seema Auntie, for better or for worse, I'd say. Smriti holds an MFA in films from Columbia University. Welcome, Smriti, and congratulations on The Romantics.
Thank you so much, Namrita. Good to see you.
So, Smriti, you are a diaspora kid. You've grown up here in the US, and I've seen the trajectory of your work, from St. Louis Superman to The Romantics. So, are you exploring your own identity through your work? Usually,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as a NRI, as a diaspora kid, first generation, immigrant, as we say, I think my identity is multidimensional. I feel Indian, but I'm also American, and all of my work reflects some aspect, of my exploration of the world that I live in. So a lot of it is about, exploring my Indian roots, and a lot of it is also about better understanding my country and the politics of my country, my home country of America. So yeah.
Yeah, I see that in your work, and I've talked to you about the Suitable Girl too, which was about arranged marriages in India. So I saw The Romantics twice, and I'm so glad I'm so glad that you've made a series highlighting a director, because I think filmmaking is a director's medium. So tell me, what was your intention behind making this documentary, and why did you choose Yash Chopra to highlight, Bollywood, or should I say Hindi cinema? And why didn't you add directors like Guru Dutt or Bimal Roy or, Sanjay Leela Bansali for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think in any kind of storytelling, including documentary, you don't, you want to tell a more universal story through a specific lens. And it's the intention of the series was not to do a survey film about Hindi cinema. And it also wasn't just about doing I thought Yash Chopra was, a great lens through which to tell the story, just because his career spanned so many decades and so many different eras, of Indian culture and of Hindi cinema. So, he started his career post-independence, just immediately post-partition. And, his career spanned through the 2010s, through corporatization. His last film was in 2012. And so much had happened in the landscape, of Indian culture over those years, and that are reflected in his films and through his films. So he seemed, there's not that many filmmakers whose careers have that much longevity, so he seemed like a great example, a great prism through which to tell the story. But also, like, even, in telling the story of Yash Chopra's career, it wasn't just about, recapping, the highlights of his career, the best films, the most beloved films. It was really about telling a story, about him as a filmmaker. And about sort of what, was changing in India over the course of his career. So the films that we chose to focus on specifically were chosen because they reflected, both of those elements. Either they were very pivotal in his career, for better or for worse, or they reflected something larger that was happening, in Indian culture and society, sociopolitically, historically, et cetera. So, it's for that reason, sometimes, we chose to foreground lesser known films, or and so it's really about telling the most compelling story, as opposed to just doing a survey film about the highlights.
Yeah, and I love that aspect about it, the socio-political scenario and how it affected Hindi cinema. And we all have grown up watching Yash Raj films, for that matter. And he was a filmmaker, I'll say, who wrapped romance in a chiffon sari and, made his heroines look divine, I'll say. And, like you said, he started with larger than life movies like Waqt and then Till Jab Tak Hai Jaan. And now Aditya is taking his legacy forward, and, he's making his own identity. So, one thing that makes Aditya his father's son, and one trait that sets him apart from Yashji.
I think in terms of what connects them, what they have in common, it's certainly a passion that borders on obsession over cinema. They're both extremely passionate, extremely dedicated to this work, and this way of expressing, themselves. But they approach it differently. I think first and foremost, Yash Chopra was a director first, and he was more prolific as a director than Aditya has been. Aditya to date, I think, has only directed 4 films. So, and he had a bigger vision, for his career as, building a studio and being a producer, than Yash Chopra did. Yash Chopra was really about making his next film and continuing to make films and contribute to the canon, of films through what he directed. But Aditya had a bigger vision. He wanted to sort of change the industry. And I think, Aditya has been as passionate about producing as Yash Chopra was about directing.
Yeah, and I could see that difference, Yash Chopra, when you talked about Chandini, he risked so much while making that movie. As an audience and as people who've seen their movies, I don't know if Aditya would be able to take such a huge risk. Like, Yashti, he said, okay, I'll just do it because my heart tells me when, those movies weren't running. So, that's those risks are really, that make movie making so wonderful. And I personally love the narrative, even, though you took those 35 topmost stars of Hindi cinema, it wasn't all about them. It was about the craft of making films. So how did you come up with the questions, and what preparation did you have to do? I know it was a massive, massive project.
Yeah, it was a lot of research, that went into it. I had a really amazing research team, an archival team that went through all of the archives, and did a lot of research. We watched all of the films together. We discussed, sort of their larger significance. We crafted a narrative, and we sort of aligned our questions accordingly, to try to touch on a broad range of topics and, tell a pretty sweeping story, in 4 one-hour episodes. So that was, like a big challenge was doing all of that, finding a way to tell a really satisfying, compelling story that covered so much ground in just 4 one-hour episodes. But yeah, a lot of preparation, went into, the research process and the interview process. And then a lot of time, went into the edit, we had to cut down hundreds of hours of material, into 4 hours. And so a lot, took 2 years to edit the series,
Wow.
So it was a laborious process, but I think well worth it.
I know we are enjoying it, and I think I'm seeing a lot of millennials also watching it. So it's reaching a wider audience, not just Indians. A lot of non-Indians are, also appreciating it and knowing more about Hindi cinema, which they did not. Like you said, that was, I guess, one of your, visions for this documentary. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I also really liked you touching upon the personal relationships, especially the importance of Yash Chopra's wife, Pamela Chopra. Very less is known of her, and the father-son dynamics and the sibling relationships. So that was, I think, it humanized the whole documentary. So can you briefly touch upon that about Pamela?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was immediately apparent, in the earliest research phases, how influential Pamela Chopra was to Yash Chopra's aesthetic, his story sense, and of course the music, in his films. She, it's a product. She's a product of her times, and I think in any other time period, and especially more recent days, she would have been, an incredible producer, an incredible storyteller, in her own right. And it was important to me, we all talk about, for good reason, about how how great and complex the female characters are in Yash Chopra's films. And I think, it was important to me to connect that back to his marriage, and Pamela Chopra and her influence on that and on the music, and just to show that they were like a real creative partnership, which was so beautiful, to see. So yeah, that was sort of like part of the intention from the very beginning. And, for the Chopras, filmmaking has really been a family business. It's something that they were, that bonded them all, and really something that they all participated in their own way, each member of the family. And so the family story being at the core of all of this, was really important to me, particularly, examining the relationship between Yash Chopra and Aditya Chopra. It seemed an integral part of the story.
Absolutely, and love the archives, that showed, and didn't know that Pam Chopra wrote Kabhi Kabhi. I mean, she did write that wonderful movie, I have to say. And one thing that, I just thought of was that, you did touch upon that 80s wasn't the best time for Hindi cinema, and, a lot of South remakes were being made, and a lot of action came into play. So do you see any parallels between the 80s and the present time? Because a lot of big action movies are being made and, remake them. So, so what do you think of that? Is it now, that time it was the VCR, and this time it's more like OTT threat, which is, people are great. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there's clear parallels, I think, between then and now. It really was new technology forced the theatrical film business to adapt and evolve, whether it was VHS at that time or OTT now, it was technology that forced the film industry to evolve and adapt. And I think these things are cyclical because, eventually, it took, a blockbuster like Chandini to sort of break us out of that action era, and similarly, I'm sure all it will take is like one great, theatrical film that everybody really rallies around, that will break us out of the sort of action trend that we're in now. But I think, the theatrical movie-going experience is something that, as a culture, I think we are not ready to let go of, but it's also no longer necessary, to watch movies. And so, with each iteration of new technology, as it becomes less and less necessary, filmmakers and studios and producers and all are having to find ways in which, to draw audiences into a theater, while they, compete with, other avenues, for entertainment. And it's no different now, and they'll figure it out, and we'll keep going to the movies, and some movie will come along that will, be a blockbuster, whether it's a romance or a drama or, some other genre of movie will, and everyone will get excited again to go to the theater to see that movie. These things are cyclical. And as long as, as an industry, we're able to adapt and evolve, it will all work out.
I hope so too. We're keeping my fingers crossed, But I saw one lovely movie on, the OTT, Kala, which had beautiful music and lovely, writing. So I hope, those kind of movies come onto the big screen, because it was a visual treat for everybody to watch, but it did not have a big release. So, talking about, March is Women's History Month. So I want to ask you, which character, maybe in front of the camera, or or a person, do you get inspired by, or you find powerful?
Oh goodness, that's a very big question, and the list is very, very long.
Okay.
I think lately, I'm drawing a lot of inspiration from women who take risks to take control of their careers, and really, demand, that their seat at the table. I think that's challenging to do still, in this business, especially in an entertainment business.
Yes.
But we're seeing it all around us, and it's really inspiring. Whether it's executives, C-suite executives, at major entertainment companies, like of course Bela Bajaria at Netflix, or Simran Sethi at Disney now, and or you're seeing directors, filmmakers, who are really demanding that that they that they have a voice, and that they have control of their narratives, and even actors, who are branching out, and doing incredible things, to build their brands and build their careers, in an entrepreneurial way. I recently had the privilege, relatively recently had the privilege of speaking with Preeti Zinta, and just hearing about her journey as becoming a league owner in IPL, and how instrumental she was in IPL, was so inspiring to hear, just to hear how, so I think that is what really inspires me, is this sort of new, generation of women who are really staking their claim, in every corner of the industry, and really supporting each other, as we do it collectively. So
absolutely. And talking about Preeti, she's from my hometown, Shimla. So her trajectory from Shimla to, where she is now is just amazing and so inspiring, I have to say. And I have to mention your dad's film, Kamla. What a film, what a powerful film for women, I'll say. So I really enjoyed, and, when I saw that. So one more question was, about the series. I'll go back to that. Most unforgettable part and the most challenging part of making the Romantics.
The most challenging part was figuring out how to condense hundreds of hours of material into 4 hours. That was a big challenge, and it took a lot of iterating, in the edit, to figure out exactly the right flow. And so that was definitely the most challenging part. The most exciting part, honestly, has been seeing the reaction to the series. You kind of, when you make anything, films, TV shows, etc., you work in a vacuum, and you really work in isolation. And then you sort of put something out in the world, and to see it not only be appreciated, as a form of entertainment, but also just seeing how people are talking about the emotional connection that they're having to the series, the emotions that the series is bearing out, has been really, really incredible. Not something that I expected or anticipated, but incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, it's just lovely, to see this. And especially, music has been such a huge part of Yashraj films. So any movie that stands out in your mind that you love, musically and otherwise?
I think musically, Chandini and DDLJ are the ones that I always come back to again and again. It's just like those films are so jam-packed with the most incredible songs, that just become an indelible part of your brain, like you cannot, like they just trigger memories, and they, I don't know, they're incredible. And my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, just watched DDLJ for the first time just a week ago. And I see her like going around humming the songs, So, the fact that films like that, can endure, across generations, for so many years. I think that the music in those films has really contributed to their long-lasting impact. And they're just personally the ones that I listen to on repeat.
Yeah, same here. And I also loved Silsila's music.
Yes,
somehow.
absolutely.
With
yes.
the poetry and all, it was so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really was, yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about your kids, and my question was, but now you're a mother and you're a parent, and would you allow your kids to grow up on Bollywood films?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I was growing up, I had no restrictions, on what I could watch, in the sense of, anything that was like cinematic, or, movies and things like that. There was no restriction, because my father, really believed that, it's art, and you have to contextualize it, from the time it was made, and analyze it, at face value, rather than restrict or censor it. And so I grew up watching films that were way beyond my comprehension and sometimes beyond, what was appropriate for me at a given age. But my dad, really believed that this is art, and you have to engage with it and learn how to engage with it, rather than, try to curate it too much or restrict it too much. And I try, my kids are young, so of course there's still some rules, that we have. But, definitely I think, we'll always be pushing the boundaries in terms of what they can watch and what we want them to watch. We want them to have a very robust diet, of storytelling content, from books, television, movies, poetry, art, fine art, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely expose them to everything. And, as Indians, like they say, we love our own ma and we love cinema. So two kind of, that's very common. And that goes. And like you just talked about your dad, and you hold such deep respect for him. You've talked about his struggles here as a brown filmmaker. And you are carrying his legacy forward, just like in the Romantics, Aditya Chopra is. So do you think of your dad's legacy when you start a project, or do you just completely start on a blank canvas?
Always. His legacy is with me, every day and everything that I do. He was my biggest influence, in so many ways, not just as a filmmaker, but just as a human being, in terms of how he conducted himself, in the industry and how generous he was. And honestly, that legacy is the reason, that my career has gone the way it has. I still go into meetings, with big executives, big filmmakers, actors, things like that. And they see my last name and they say, "Oh, are you related to Jag Mundhra?" And I say, "Yes." And then there's inevitably some story about how they've been to our house for chai, and my dad spent hours talking to them and mentoring them, and when they were young, and starting out in the industry. And I really benefit from that legacy, in every aspect of my career. So on every plane, his impact, is part of my life every day.
So wonderful to know, and I'm sure he'll be so proud of you, up there. So what's next for you, Smriti, in the end?
Next for me is a bit of a break,
Okay,
it's I've been racing a lot, the last few years. It's been an incredible, few years, but I think I just sometimes you have to give yourself a little space, for inspiration to find you. So I think that's what I'm going to do now.
So I'll just say next for you is a good vacation somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And enjoy the success of the Romantics. Very, very well done. Looking forward to whenever you're ready, for your next project. And I think as an Indian, as we all are very excited to see Hindi cinema now up, in the, like we saw the Golden Globe Awards, RRR doing so well. So people are knowing more about mainstream Hindi cinema through the work and your work too. So thank you and appreciate your time, Smriti.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to speak with you, Namrita.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Shosha is a creative Indian restaurant located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Shosha is a woman-owned business that serves traditional Indian flavors assimilated with molecular gastronomy techniques. The best Indian bar with happy hours in the Bay Area serves handcrafted drinks inspired by flavors from India with modern craft cocktails that are presented in unique ways. Shosha is a modern take on traditional Indian cuisine. We specialize in corporate luncheon, anniversary celebrations, birthday parties, and catering. Do check us out for a memorable modern Indian dining experience. Shosha is located at 141 South Murphy Avenue in Sunnyvale, California.